the entertainment highlight of the week.
Red Ray Gun Limited presents
The Benji and Nick Show.
Hello.
Hello.
That's what I'm saying.
Where did that come from?
No idea. My mouth.
Oh, I liked it.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good day.
Good evening.
Good weather we're having for the time of year.
Well, it is good to be here, isn't it, I must say.
Good indeed, sir.
Goodness.
Loch Ness, thank you.
It's all right.
Pincer manoeuvre.
That was a good manoeuvre. You know, I just didn't have the courage to think quick enough.
I know. And we'll be releasing a fully annotated book on Loch Ness strategies. That was the Loch Ness game. It is not about Loch Ness, and it isn't a game.
I can honestly say I don't think I've ever been to Loch Ness, actually.
I have.
Have you really?
Yes.
Oh, that's ruined it. I was going to say that would be a great featurette for us to go to Loch Ness for no particular reason other than to do the Loch Ness game at Loch Ness.
I drove round it sort of on I saw it from a distance. I was in Scotland on a theatre tour. It's enormous.
I'm sure it is pretty. I mean, you have to be to. You know, it's got a monster living there
Exactly.
Isn't it? Really,
well, exactly.
He's got to have room for his bed and his kitchenette and all that business.
Probably time to mention that this is the Benji and Nick show, but you've already gathered that.
It is.
And I'm not Benji.
And I'm not Nick, but what we do is we talk about cult television. So TV shows in the past, things you might remember, things that you're very fond of, things you might have forgotten, and things you'd like to forget. And what we do is we riff on it, we review it, we look at it, and we just sort of talk about it, really. We just love it, don't we?
Yeah, we do. What would we like to forget? There are a few, aren't there?
Yeah, Danger Man, not Danger Man.
No, I like Danger Man.
No, Danger Man's good. No, what was that? The one that I gave away. I don't know. I mean,
the Nightmare Man.
Nightmare Man. Yeah,
Yeah, I like it. I think that's unfair.
I could forget that one.
There are several things we do in the Benji and Nick show. One, we set ourselves something to watch, and then the next week we talk about it. The other thing is we do a bit of commentary of something. So far we've been doing Doctor Who.
We should do one next week, actually, because we haven't done a Pyramids of Mars for a while. Yeah, we've left everybody at episode
I've got
1.
other plans, but okay, well, we'll see how we feel at the end of the podcast. We'll feel our way through it. Yes. What's the other thing we do? We talk about what we've been watching lately. Yeah.
We certainly do.
And what we're going to do in this podcast is When 8 Bells Toll, which is a film of an Alistair MacLean book. And before that, we'll be doing your emails. And after that, we'll be trying to talk to Jamie Anderson, son of Jerry Anderson. I've got a funny feeling we won't make contact with him this time. He's got a very busy day, but he said we're welcome to try.
Well, it's good enough, isn't it? I think there's no harm in trying these things, quite frankly. We've
had a good run of Jamie Anderson. Last week we actually had him on the show.
Yeah, I'd say if we don't get through to him this week, it's kind of okay, because it's like, well, he was here last week, which is good enough, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Just a quick mention of what's entertaining us at the moment. I'll just quickly run through mine. The Avengers. I've just bought Series 5, the colour Mrs. Peel series.
Very good.
Yeah, really, really enjoying it. I mean, I have to say, I think what's coming up, what's speaking to me is that Series 4, the black and white Steed and Peel series, is probably the best.
Oh, really?
It's more sci-fi. Series 5 so far, it's getting very whimsical, and although it's beautiful and stylish, it seems to be very self-conscious of what it's become. I don't know. That's sort of blasphemous. I'm not liking it quite so much. But the interesting thing is that my son, who's now playing Minecraft again rather than Fortnite and doing it on his computer, so he's not monopolising the television, he's playing Minecraft and he is occasionally watching what I'm watching on the television, and he's really liking the Avengers. He stops and watches bits of it and says, this is really good. Yeah, watch another one, Daddy. He watches about, I'd say, 35% of it.
That's still pretty good, though, to have him engaging, especially at his age, to be engaging in programs of that age as well.
Yeah, it's very stylish and flashy looking, although he didn't like the Fear Merchants because they were using basically Patrick Cargill, who was one of the number twos in The Prisoner, but also famously in a series of really pappy sitcoms called Father, Dear Father. He makes such a fantastic villain. He's head of a company that gives people the commercial edge by frightening their competitors to death, by finding out what it is that makes them most fearful. So Chancellor Goth from The Deadly Assassin is frightened to death by Bernard Horsfall, that's the name, isn't it? Is frightened to death by a white mouse. And the chap who played the sort of friendly, dopey warder in Porridge, I can't remember his name. Do you know the one I mean? Mr. Barraclough, anyway, was the name of the character. Oh, yeah, Mr. Barraclough. He... oh, really, Fletch? Is that true? You can just walk out of here? Oh, well, off you go then. He's terrified of spiders. And, of course, my son is terrified of spiders. And they showed a really rubbish fake spider. But Ben was he was traumatised. I said, for goodness sake, I don't like spiders, but I can put up with that. Right, that's The Avengers. The Capture, have you seen any of that? Brand new BBC thriller. They say it's meant to sort of rival The Bodyguard for sort of water cooler TV and all that.
What's your verdict? Does it?
Well, it's all about how it's sort of about fake news, and it's how CCTV footage could be manipulated by clever people.
Yeah.
And so basically, because juries... You can't... phone tapping is not admissible when you're trying to catch a terrorist. But CCTV footage is, and juries like it because they feel they are seeing something and it can't be faked. And the idea in this is that there's a process called correction, where when they know someone's guilty because they got wiretap stuff that shows that they are, but they can't prove it, so they fake the video footage.
I'm sure it happens.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I don't know whether it does happen. I think. But don't say that because people will be around to shoot you. But, for example, the other day, Jamie Anderson showed me a development of that program, that audio program called Lyrebird, where you could, previously I'd subscribed to it, and you say about, 60 words into it that they specify, phrases, and then you can type, and then it will speak back to you in your voice.
Oh, that's creepy.
And the expression wasn't, the intonation wasn't quite realistic, but at times it was uncanny. But now they've perfected it. And Jamie showed me a thing where there was a voice saying stuff, and he said, now just type stuff in, and you just type stuff in, and it says perfectly, like a normal person, the thing you have typed in for it to say. So it's not long before people can convincingly create... You just need a lot of sample material for the program to work out intonation and stuff. But, they can create what someone is saying, things that they have never said.
I think as well, isn't it a case of, certainly with things like the phones, that they learn all the time. Like when you've got your Siris and your Googles and your Alexas and things like that, all the time that you're asking it things, it's a great sample bit of data because it's analysing the way that you say things. So I don't think it will be long before this technology gets used quite a lot, and we have it. It's things like films. I think there will be a time when there'll be computer, not celebrities, but actors that are purely computers and things like that.
Computer generated,
yeah. It will get to the stage where we'll be reviving older... I mean, we're already doing it now, aren't we, with, Peter Cushing in Star Wars now, and John Lennon in Yesterday, and that Will Smith, the latest Will Smith one, where he's just younger. Technology is crazy, isn't it? It's
yes, the ultimate vanity project. I thought that.
I thought the same.
That on principle.
Yeah,
let's do a film with me and me younger. What? Why?
So why? You're old. Just play somebody's dad. It's much better for you.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch that. Anyway, back to The Capture itself. There are so many things that are good about it, and so many fantastic actors in it. And the actor who I think is the lead, this is the thing that it becomes less and less clear who the story's about, actually, and that's one of the failings of it, I find. Also, the script is written in a strange transatlantic way, which, even though it's set in England, people are calling detective sergeants and detective inspectors detective. And as far as I'm aware, that in this country, those people are referred to by their rank and they're not just called detective. Whereas in America, you call someone detective. So I think it's being made to be friendly to the American market. Also, they're using the word truck rather than lorry and things like that. So I hate that homogenization, and I feel it's an artistic compromise too far. I sound like a right old pillar.
No, I think you speak the truth.
And the actor who plays the lead detective inspector, whose name I don't know, do you want to do a quick Google for me, being a young person, fleet of finger? Is it like Holiday someone, her name is, or something like that? She was in the J.K. Rowling detective series, Strike, or something it was called. And she was utterly compelling and brilliant, so I can see why they have given her the lead in this.
Holiday Granger.
There you are, Holiday Granger. She's kind of like a more urban version of Jenna Coleman, actually. She's very similar. But yeah, she was very charismatic in that other program I just mentioned. But in this, I don't know whether it's the writing or the directing or some decisions that she made, or a mixture of all of it, but she is not likeable. And I think that when you make a drama about a very unfriendly, frightening concept, if no one in it is likeable, then it's hard to engage with it. And everyone in this is flawed, and no one is likeable.
Yeah, it turns you off. It turns me off.
It's like going to a party and not liking or knowing anyone there, and you just want to leave. That's the trouble.
Well, you need to care about people, and if you don't care about them because they're not particularly likeable, then what's the point?
I didn't care. And I felt that her reaction to things was, although realistic, I mean, she's an amazing actor. I mean, I've got a huge admiration for her, but she seemed too near to tears too often, which might be realistic, but especially, when there's an unfortunate tradition of women being portrayed being weaker, I think it's a mistake to have her. I don't think she should be hard as nails and inhuman, but she just seemed to be too upset all the time. And you just thought, I want to see you being stronger and taking control more. But of course, she wasn't in control. I don't know. It was an interesting and thought-provoking climax to it I watched last night. And they've clearly set it up to do another series, but I've got a distinct feeling that I won't be watching.
Which is fair. Kudos to you for following it to the end, though. That's commitment.
Yeah, it was nice of me, wasn't it?
Yeah. They'll thank you. You'll get a letter in the post.
What have you been watching recently?
I've been watching. I've sort of, obviously, carrying on my Star Trek journey. I've been watching a bit of DS9. Series 1 it's not great, to be honest. I'm finding Series 1 is a bit like all these things.
I don't get on with DS9 at all.
Roland Moore comes into it in Series 3. He's the producer, writer, and everything, and that's when everybody says it picks up. So I'm sort of holding out for that. But
the latter stuff is better. I dipped into it, and it has a bit of more vavavoom to it.
I can imagine it. I can imagine it does. But I'm sticking with it, which is okay. And I'm taking it slowly. But I've been kind of getting through it by watching Star Trek Discovery, to which that was one. I never really got into the second half of the first series because they split it or something, didn't they? And so I never really sat down and got into that. However, I have, and I've finished it last night.
The first series?
The first series, yes. So I'm yet to start the second series.
The second series is better.
But to be honest, the second half of the first series is brilliant. And now I understand, because they kind of suffered for their art a little bit, because I felt like the first half, they had so many things to set up for the big finale at the end. There were loads of things which had to sort of follow through to the end, that it made the first half feel a little bit underwhelming and a little bit disjointed.
Definitely.
At times. And also, it felt like a lot of kind of pointless messing around, really. Whereas the second half of that first series is great. It's like the stakes are high.
Real purpose, hasn't it?
Purpose and direction, yeah. And it feels like now, especially given the fact that it's. I won't spoil it for people, but I will say that given the fact that it's a Star Trek which is allegedly set before the original series, which I do have problems with the fact that the technology is way above anything that we ever saw in the original series.
Yeah, I mean, they say it's set before, but it's really, this is a lot of Star Trek fans have complained about this quite rightly, I think that it's a reboot. It is a reboot. It is a reboot,
and you know, it bugged me a little bit because it's things like, okay, if you've not seen it, spoiler alert, but you know, Captain Pike comes back at the end, and it's the Enterprise, and so of course I thought, oh my god, it's the Enterprise, this is amazing, it looks gorgeous. The guy playing Pike is amazing. He's really brilliant. Similar as well, doesn't he, to the original actor?
Yeah, he's fantastic as well in the next series.
But I was really disappointed. I thought, oh great, original Enterprise, let's see the bridge. And the bridge inside is nothing like it's got like
the same basic layout, but a far more modernised version of it. And I was reading an article about how they said, you know, they couldn't have the original Enterprise bridge because it's not suitable for widescreen, and pathetic excuse.
I know, and it wouldn't look good with the materials they used to make it. And I thought that's such a shame because I think, you know, it would have. Isn't their excuse something like the reason it's all very retro in the 60s is because that was the fashion? Like the fashion was suddenly starships were designed to look retro or some rubbish like that. Well, I think you could have built the bridge to look pretty much exactly the same, like in Doctor Who. I mean, look at that. You know, when we go back to that original console room or control room, as a lot of people call it.
As I call it.
As you call it, yeah. And
it's John Nathan Turner who introduced the term console room.
He certainly did. But that doesn't look particularly dated. I look at that because the HD cameras and the use of clever, subtle adjustments make all the difference. So I was a little bit disappointed because I sort of felt like this is... And to be fair, they have used this as an opportunity to gain more of an identity as this previous kind of pre-new original series era, but I just felt like it was a bit of a missed opportunity to tie those knots firmly, you know, and have the Enterprise being the Enterprise that we know, and them being like, this is how we do things on the Enterprise. It's a special design, you know.
Yes, I mean, I like the take on the Enterprise uniforms.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah, I love those
almost like
uniforms.
The original. But I felt that the set, I see what you mean. The set should be as close to the original as the uniforms are. But maybe they feel that's what they've done. It doesn't bother me too much. As I say, I just really regard it as a reboot. There's no way any of this stuff happened before the events of the original series. It just doesn't fit, does it? Even though in the next series, I have to tell you, they do a recap of the cage.
Oh, really?
At the beginning of an episode, and then they go straight in to, you know, so they show all the old bits and then they show the new version of it. It's really, I just think they're having fun, and I can understand that if you're a real Star Trek continuity buff, it's going to be bloomin' irritating. And even though I am a big Star Trek fan, I am not as much a fan of it as I am Doctor Who, I think. I don't know it quite so well, but I do love it. I really love it. But I think I'm a step back from that slightly. I'm not as obsessive about it as I am about Doctor Who. So I can understand how people can't take that step back, as indeed I can't from Doctor Who. So, yeah. Yeah,
I think it's sort of, you know, for what it is, as you say, really, it's very enjoyable. I mean, I would say more it's a missed opportunity to really have fun with the retro vibe. But, you know, who cares? It's good drama, and I like the characters.
It has to appeal to a new audience, that's the thing. And I think the retro vibe wouldn't work for that.
You know, there are some elements, things like holograms and stuff, which just, that wasn't even in the Next Generation, you know, to the same extent. And so it's like, why bother? It's a reboot,
It's just a reboot. But no matter what they say, it's just a reboot. That is my controversial view.
But it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous reboot, so who cares? The other thing I've been watching is just a couple of Twilight Zones, really. I had my friend Tom over the other day. We always we've always...
He was doing some electrical work, apparently.
He was doing some electrical work, yes. And our thing has always been that we watch old TV. We did our film studies college course together, and we had I think it was 6 weeks to make a film of in-class time. So every single time she'd say, the teacher would say, right, go off and make your films then. And all we used to do is leave the college, get in his car, drive to my house, watch some old television. With a lot of things like tripods and Day of the Triffids we watched, and then we come back for the last 5 minutes just to come back for the end sort of sign out / briefing. We recorded our film in, I think we recorded it 2 days or something, 2 days before the deadline, filmed the whole thing, edited it the following day, submitted it, got the highest mark of the class. Bam. There we go.
Bada boom.
Bada boom. I was really quite happy.
And
with
all
that.
Thanks to Cult TV.
All thanks to Cult TV. Yeah, it was quite funny though. It was make a short film. So I just filmed a scene of myself as the Doctor regenerating. That's all I did, and just did a self-contained thing, and it was great. And that got the gig. And to be fair though, there was a really beautiful moment in it where it was just a regeneration thing, just to show off that I could do the special effect of regeneration. The best thing is, after the regeneration happened and Tom got up as the Doctor, it just randomly started snowing. So it was like this perfect. It just looked so good because it was just like change and then bam, it snowed.
Wow, that's beautiful, mate.
You know, and I remember he said in his Cockney voice, looked in the mirror first and went, "Change, yeah, I'm a new man." All right, Michael Caine. But yeah, that's what I've been watching. But I watched Twilight Zone, and I watched it was the one with the genie in the bottle, with the poor. There's a poor shopkeeper who's not got any money. He's very generous, and he wishes for money, gets loads of money, and he gives it to everybody. He says, "Oh, have this money, Mrs. So and So. You need it for this," and he's left with no money, and so he's got to make a wish again. And so he tries to think of a way he can have money through, circumstance rather than just a big wad of money. And so he wishes. He says, "I the best way is to have power." He says, "So I'd like to be, I would like to be in charge of a country, and where I'm in complete control, and I cannot be taken out of control. I cannot be unelected."
Yes.
And of course, click of the finger, he wakes up, and who is he? He's Adolf Hitler in the bunker at the end of the Second World War. So it's really scary. So in the end, he's left with nothing, but it's okay because he's realised that, you know, he's got a good life, and that actually.
Wouldn't it be interesting though that,
worse.
you know, if unlike Adolf Hitler, he doesn't elect to kill himself and is captured by the Allies and says, "No, I'm a shopkeeper." They're never going to swallow that story, are they?
No, I am a shopkeeper, and I sell antiques. Right, shove him in the cell.
Yeah, all right, Adolf, here's the noose.
Just tell everybody he's escaped to Argentina. They won't know.
Listen, we've got to mention Hornblower, surely.
Yep, of course.
We're still listening to that, aren't we? The BBC Radio.
We are, absolutely. Yeah, I've started on book 2 now.
Yeah, me
I've got
too.
to the end of the wonderful. As you, it's funny how you picked up on my favourite episode of the first bunch as well, which is the Peculiar Captain.
Yeah,
which was in the TV series
with David Warner. You sent me the clip, which
terrifying,
is terrifying,
isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely terrifying.
I'm on the landing at the moment. I don't mean the landing in my house. I mean I'm on the landing, dear. Yeah, just throw the socks up, thanks.
Cheers.
Yeah, the episode called The Landing, where they've taken the Spanish castle.
I love all those sort of rendezvous they do with, you know, when they're in battle and they're sneaking around, and
those cannon sounds are fantastic, aren't they? And that when the cannonball goes,
the artillery sort of noise.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I mean, I tell you, one of the ones I really loved was when there's a big mist, and they've got to somehow
they find themselves in the middle of a Spanish fleet.
Oh, it's just, and all the stuff as well when he's, sorry, this is just me and Nick gushing over this, when he's in the Spanish, he's in prison in the Spanish fort and stuff. It's just such a wonderfully made drama, I think, and just the fact that something made in the 60s in radio is so captivating and feels actually quite contemporary.
Inspiring. It's so inspiring. Just the storytelling, it's ageless. It's the Hornblower story. You can find it on the Radio Echoes website. It's an old BBC thing. Brilliant. Do you want to read this first email?
Oh, I would love to. It looks
I think
to me
you'll find
like
it interesting.
Quite topical as well, yes. Subject here, Star Trek Continues. It was sent on the 8th of the 10th, 2019 at 2:36. So I can imagine it must be from one of our American friends. Here we go. Hi, guys. You were talking about Star Trek Continues, and what a good fan show it was. The question was, is it still being made? Here's the problem. There were a number of fan shows at the time, with Star Trek Continues being the best. The powers that be, and I'm not sure if it was CBS or Paramount, were perfectly happy to have those fan groups making shows and films, as long as they weren't making money off it. Well, one group was, so instead of trying to decide how to handle the situation, they simply told everyone that they could no longer make Star Trek tribute stuff. This meant that Star Trek Continues could no longer continue. But the powers that be did appreciate the work done by this group of fans, so they gave specific permission to do one more episode and finish up the series. And the last episode did wrap things up and explained how Kirk became an admiral and Spock went to Vulcan, which then tied to the movie series. I hope you find this of some interest and keep up the great work. Thanks for everything you do here on your other podcast. Jeff Kapahikawangiakapono Kragen, I hope I said that right, from Roseville, CA, USA.
California. Yes. Sorry if we didn't get your name right there, Jeff. That is a fantastic name. Thank you for that.
Wonderful name. Yeah.
Well, we were wondering. I did watch a little bit of one of the episodes where Kirk, is in the Admiral's uniform and all that. It was fascinating. Such a shame that one group of fans messed it up for all the others.
It does happen in fandoms. I know for a fact that it's a very different way. Like Lucasfilms gave the green light for people to make Star Wars fan films, and there are loads of them. There are hundreds of them, and there was a big community of people that were really into it. I mean, the Doctor Who fan film thing, that's how I got into all of this in the first place, doing sound design for Big Finish, and that's still going, and people are still, I mean, the stuff they produce now is incredible compared to what I had back in the day of when I was making it. And it is a shame, the one thing about Star Trek Continues is the fact that it looks gorgeous, and they've managed to channel an era of the show in such an authentic way with actual orchestral music as well, and it just superb stuff. Brilliant. But no, that's really good. Thanks for clearing that one up, Jeff. Really appreciate the message.
Yes. Right, here's one called Neurology and War, which was sent on the 4th of October at 09:43 by John G. Wood. Dear Dynamic Duo, in case you didn't realise, Jamie's calls in the recap podcasts were linked. Oliver Sacks, the neurologist who wrote The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, also wrote the book that the film Awakenings was based on. Good fact. Well, that's amazing, isn't it? This was recommended by Jamie, wasn't it? His go-to movie. Awakenings is a strong film that I recommend. I've only watched it 3 times total, that's enough. But that's more than I watch most things. And it has been known to make me cry. I also thoroughly enjoy Benji's picks, Labyrinth and Return to Oz, both of which I've watched many times because my children gave me the excuse. Damn right. My comfort movie would be The Sting, with the Blues Brothers in second place for when I'm in a mood for a musical.
It's a good comfort film, Blues Brothers. You're totally on it with that one.
I don't think I've ever seen it. I think I've seen The Sting. I certainly heard the music. Da, 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 da. Sorry, Nick, but I'm not such a fan of your picks. Sink the Bismarck and the Cruel Sea, simply because it's not my genre, not a genre I have much interest in. It's a genre I have huge, unquenchable interest in. So that's where we differ. Thinking about it, I find most of the wartime films and series I remember fondly are set in the periphery of events. Ice Cold in Alex, which is brilliant, yeah, or Casablanca, for example, which is great as well, and Colditz, or Hogan's Heroes, which of course they made into a sitcom as well. Though I admit I haven't watched any of those in a long time, so my memory might be cheating. Ice Cold in Alex I watch fairly regularly. It's brilliant. You know Ice Cold in Alex, do you?
Yeah,
Benji?
I know it.
It's about them escaping, John Mills and Anthony Quayle and Sylvia Sims. Or Sylvia Sim, is it Sim or Sims? I can't remember. Escaping across the desert. And Harry Andrews as well. That's his name, isn't he? The guy with the sticky out ears who always plays sort of reliable sergeants or horrible aristocrats. Speaking of Hogan's Heroes, how about covering an episode of that on the podcast if it's available? God, I've no idea. Or maybe MASH, to pick another American wartime show from my childhood. Though if you do the latter, I suggest you skip to one of the later series, as the sexism in the early years makes it unwatchable for me now. Oh, I should imagine the whole business about Hot Lips Houlihan is all pretty distasteful. All the best, John. Thank you, John. That was very interesting.
MASH is just always on. If you've got Sky, you can guarantee MASH is just on. Yeah,
I keep seeing the complete box set on the market here, but I think it's gone now.
Probably bought by Sky. We've got one here from Richard Foster. Says, thank you, mystery solved. The date is the 2nd, 10th, 2019 at 1700 hours precisely. Greetings, Nick and Benji. The world works in strange ways.
This is interesting.
After you read out my earlier letter on the last podcast, one of my friends, who I hadn't realised was also a listener,
as sad as you.
Yes, yes.
Sad as us.
Welcome to the gang. Contacted me directly and mentioned that he also had a memory of a similar story. This is the Frozen story, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Thanks to the information he provided, I was able to narrow things down enough for the excellent BBC genome to spit out an answer, despite the fact that my recollection of the main cast being young people was totally incorrect.
You fool!
You old fool. My mystery show may have been serialised by the BBC in a kids' time slot, specifically in 3 parts, starting on September the 23rd, 1981, under the title of The Secret of Steel City. But it was in fact originally a Czechoslovakian movie called Tajemski Okloverho Mesta. If that's wrong,
good try.
If that's offensive to anybody, I apologise. I tried. Based on the Jules Verne story, The Bejam's Fortune. Many thanks for getting the word out and helping me track down what the mists of time had hidden from me. Best wishes and hopes that the tropical system heading your direction doesn't bring you any structural damage this weekend. Regards, Richard.
Well, actually,
it's certainly been blustery.
My mother got a leak in her ceiling.
Oh, really?
Bedroom.
I hope she made it into soup.
Hey.
Yeah, no,
she could make soup out of anything. My mother.
Well,
she's of that generation. She said to me once, "You can make anything into soup, you know." And I think I said something like, "What, like the kitchen sink?"
Next day,
no food.
Next day, you are munching on bits of tap.
That's brilliant.
Pretty treacherous. Well, I'm glad to help out. You know, some people do good deeds like relocating lost pets to their owners or returning wallets. But no, we just help people figure out dusty old memories in the back of their minds.
Of Steel City. Wow. And is it Bejam's Fortune? Begum's Fortune? I don't know what's Begum.
What's Bejam's? I don't know.
Begum. Don't know. Interesting. Andrew Pixley will be delighted to hear that. He hasn't been able to find out yet because he's been distracted doing some other great work. Wow.
I'm just gonna have a little Google of the secret of Steel City.
Yeah. There was a point I was going to make earlier, and I can't remember what it was now. That's a shame,
the city isn't actually made of steel. It's made of a sort of granite raffia work base. Yes, it was interesting. Well, I suppose now it is time that we talk about the subject at hand. I tell you, you came up with a damn good call with this. When 8 Bells Toll, the movie. Yeah. Good call for bringing this one up. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Have you seen the trailer?
Yes, I have indeed. Yes.
And the trailer reminds us that, of course, Alistair MacLean, who wrote loads and loads and loads of brilliant thrillers, is Alistair MacLean still around?
I would.
I'm thinking not, but I'm horribly guilty if I'm mistaken. But his, go on.
No, he passed away 2nd of Feb 1987.
Oh yes, I thought as much. Yes. His thriller action books were seen as surefire hits, and the movie industry really cottoned onto this and started adapting them. So The Guns of Navarone, which was a toweringly successful movie.
Huge.
Actually, I'm not that fond of it, bizarrely. I think there are a few things wrong with it, but I won't bore you with it now. And then Ice Station Zebra, which is famously, for me, the film that resulted in the Prisoner episode Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling, because they had to write an episode of The Prisoner which largely didn't feature Patrick McGoohan, because Patrick McGoohan got the job on Ice Station Zebra and had to leave The Prisoner for a few weeks to shoot that. So they just filmed top and tail bits and then did voiceovers, so The Prisoner became inhabited a different body, played by Nigel Stock in that episode. And Where Eagles Dare, which is one of my all-time favourite movies.
I was going to say, it's your biggie, isn't it?
Yeah, with Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood. I had a little joke, obviously, with an old friend, which I've mentioned this before, that we joked that Clint Eastwood must have been very bemused, thinking, hell, I was cast in a film with Richard Burton, but he doesn't seem to be here. Because you could tell that there's a stand-in, at any given moment. Richard Burton was, off drinking somewhere rather than filming. But anyway, a great movie. And this, when 8 Bells Toll, was like the movie industry's next big Alistair MacLean thing, and Alistair MacLean certainly wrote the screenplay for this as well. He may have written it for Where Eagles Dare and the other two as well, which rarely happens these days, doesn't it? Rarely does an author write
actually take part in the adaptation. Yeah, no, you're right.
And to be blunt and horribly fair, which makes my heart bleed, when 8 Bells Toll was the one that fell off the, I don't know, that was not as successful as the others. It is not widely or particularly fondly remembered.
I think I can see why. I mean, I adored it, but I can see why. I can see why it never. It's a bit
really cheaper than
off.
The others, isn't it?
It's cheap. Yes, it's cheap. It's the whole location set in Scotland thing. Even though obviously the story is. It's very easy to film. Not a huge cast. I think the problem that lies with it is
Anthony Hopkins wasn't such a big star in those days either.
He only got paid $8,000 to do this.
That was quite a lot of money.
Quite a lot of money then, I suppose.
That was That was about 3 times as much money as a normal person would earn in a year.
And I suppose it can't have been a very long shoot either.
Yeah.
Thinking
I love the fact that he was paid $8,000.
I know.
How much was Robert Morley paid?
£2.65 and a couple of cream cakes.
Yes, have you got any proper biscuits? The one with the cream in the middle.
He's on the wine list. And I loved it. I thought it was really great fun. It was a real 70s flick.
It's basically James Bond. We should explain to people.
And that's where I think it sort of falls off the wagon, because it doesn't have its own identity. That's its problem. It tries very hard to be a sort of Bond film.
Bullion ships are missing, and Calvert goes off to investigate. Yeah, just
and
throw
it's
that in.
Lots of people on lots. It's a bit of a of a sort of Planet of the Spiders sort of affair. Like, look how many vehicles we can shoehorn into this short amount of time. Because there's ships and there's helicopters and there's...
This would have all been in the book, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure. But, you know, it's just one of those things. But because it is just... and even the music, I hate to say it, I love the music. I think it's amazing. But the actual main thread of that is da, 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 which is pretty much exactly the same as...
So it's just off the James Bond.
It's just off the James Bond thing, but it's also like with that there's also a couple of string bits where it is completely Bond. And like lead up to that, sometimes underneath it there is a yeah. So but it's great. I mean, I tell you what I thought watching it, funnily enough. I thought this is basically if Cadbury's could have made a Milk Tray Man film, this would have been it.
Although the funny thing is about the character of Calvert that he's, unlike Bond, he's not that suave, is he? He's a sort of funny little man who kind of beavers around and fights dirty, and
he's a man's man, isn't he? He's a real gruff kind of sailor character.
Did you notice the narrative technique that's also used in Where Eagles Dare? And I wonder whether it's in the books as well. It seems to be an Alistair MacLean thing, where he starts the story with something that happens later in the story. He reaches a point and then he whips back to the beginning and then leads up to that point again, and you go, oh my God.
Now it makes sense. Yeah.
So with this, it starts with Calvert sneaking aboard a ship. I mean, the credits are played by him over him just climbing up a chain up to the anchor on this ship, just very slowly. And of course, it's not Anthony Hopkins, so the poor stunt guy has to keep his head down so you can't see that it's not him. And then he sneaks in, and then he goes into a room, and there's a man in the dark, Prentice Hancock, giving a fantastic performance as a dead body. He's just sitting there, and suddenly he's pointing a gun at him, and so he puts his hands up, but then he slowly realizes that the guy is just pointing the gun, and when he moves to one side the gun doesn't move, and then he pulls him over and finds he's got a
knife in his back.
Chisel. It looks like a chisel stuck in his back.
It's horrible.
And then he looks around, opens a door, and finds another guy with his throat cut. And then immediately, boom, you cut to a helicopter landing, and him, Calvert, arriving at sort of MI5 HQ or whatever, and being briefed by Corin Redgrave and then Robert Morley. And then Robert Morley said, yes, I've got two excellent men, bring them in now. Brings them in, and it's the two guys you've just seen killed earlier on. You think, oh, it's not going to go well for them. So Prentice Hancock has no lines you may or may not be happy to hear.
But it's a great way of pulling people in, because it does, you're immediately engaged.
It's lovely.
You know,
love it.
It's a bit like it's not.
I sometimes just watch that bit up until that point because it gives me such a thrill. But this is one of my go-to movies.
It's a thrilling film, and the one thing I like about the film is the fact that it doesn't. There's rarely a dull moment. It keeps moving quite a lot, and there's an awful lot going on. There's an awful lot of people doing things.
But it's quite intelligently written, isn't it?
Oh, it's great. It's a really, it's, you know, if there's one thing I would say, and you can see, you know, when people would have watched it, and if you weren't paying attention, you would have thought it was a sort of B-movie Bond flick. But when you actually watch it, it's really brilliant. And I actually think that the characters had mileage that they could have done another film, because they were all really good characters.
I wonder whether Alistair MacLean wrote more stories for Calvert.
It'd be interesting to find that one out. You know, Calvert and Uncle Arthur.
Yes.
You know,
there are so many things I want to tell you about this, Benji. One of which is, which one shall I pick first? Have you ever listened to the Big Finish Fourth Doctor story, The Evil One?
No, I've not, no.
Okay. Well, the first 15 minutes of it are an homage to this film.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
I'm going to have to listen now.
Yeah. Have a look, listen to that on your Big Finish app. I'll say no more. The other thing is that when I'd already been taken to the cinema, I think, to see Where Eagles Dare, and I was taken to the cinema to see this when I was a kid, just before the final episode of Colony in Space.
That's a good memory.
And I just loved it because it was guys running around with guns, and that was all we did at playtime.
Yeah,
it's this sort of post-war generation obsessed with conflict, and told about it all the time by your parents who'd spent all their time in air raid shelters fantasizing about beating the Germans, and I remember coming back and watching the final episode of it's not the final one, I can't remember which episode of Colony in Space, a late on episode where there's gun battles between the colonists and the IMC miners. So it just seemed like everything I was watching at that time was guys with guns, and I loved it. And I remember it just got me very, very excited. So I was delighted when I saw it on television for the first time. And I'll tell you another interesting thing is that when it was screened on a Saturday morning once on ITV, they cut out the section where, when they first go ashore, they cut out the section where he has the fight with it. Funnily enough, the video, you sent me a video of you putting a thumbs up in front of it when he was having a fight in the graveyard with the two heavies.
I don't know why they cut that out. Well, why?
They cut that out. So can you imagine? They go ashore, blah, 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 and then the next thing is they're coming back and he's all covered in muck. And and he says, "What happened to you?" And he says, "Oh, I met some girl and had a tumble with her," or something, And they left that in,
you
but
might
they
have been
cut
led
out
to believe
the
it was that
fight.
woman in the woman in the shop.
The old lady.
The old lady.
All the phone lines are down.
She she can't have been an actual actor. Surely she was.
She was dubbed as well, wasn't she?
She was clearly just the shopkeeper.
So many people in this movie are dubbed.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I mean, like Natalie Dellon, if that's how her name's pronounced. She is. She's great in this.
She's great.
She's
a very sexy lady, isn't she?
She what?
Are we allowed to say that?
We can say that. She's a very sexy lady. This whole film is quite a sexy film. There's a lot of...
But that's the bizarre thing. Sorry to interrupt you for a moment because I'm so enthusiastic. They cut out the fight scene because they thought it was too violent for kids to watch, and yet they left in the bit where later on, when Calvert has snuck into the castle and he takes the daughter and he gets the daughter to distract the guard by basically exposing herself and making sexual innuendos, and when she goes to slap him when he starts undoing her top, and she says, "What if he's not interested in me?" And he said, "God, that's all we need, a guard who's queer." But they left all that in for kids to watch, but they cut the fight sequence. Interesting system of values going on.
Interesting.
Anyway, back to
I'll tell you that there was a bit in there which I thought was very risque. Actually, was at the end when he confronts Natalie in the castle, and the way in which she handles the deer horn, so to speak.
He drives into the wall.
He drives into the wall, and she very suggestively uses her hands on and I'm not going to say anything else, but I was...
Yes, they left that in for the kids to watch as well.
I was really surprised. I saw that, I thought, blimey, I thought, that's just... Even by 70s standards, I thought, yep, she's obviously knows what she's doing. But it was very... A sexy film, but a good film. A really, really good film. An interesting fact about this film is that Anthony Hopkins fell in love with somebody in the cast, or not. I don't know if it's the cast or the crew. I think it was the crew of this film, and subsequently left his wife for her.
Wow.
Yeah, that was in the. I was reading their Wikipedia. Yeah, left somebody. So this film obviously means something to him.
Well, this was in his wild, wild days of drinking. He had an alcohol problem, and
Well, you can tell that from the fact he's offered cocoa, and the next minute he's drinking whiskey.
Yes, he takes the chance to sort of have a swig of whiskey at any point, and one wonders whether Anthony Hopkins had said, "I think maybe I'd had the whiskey." Do you think? Yes, I think so.
I think he's a whiskey drinker. I mean, the worst thing about this film for Anthony Hopkins is he's just got the most dreadful haircut, hasn't he? Really not a good look. It's a real.
And I love the fact that he's got a sort of very unflattering. His body is not. He's not in good shape. But men weren't in the 70s.
Well, he's you know, which I think
Nobody was.
We kind of need more of that now. We need more people to look less kind of chiseled and
to make us feel better.
Yeah, but it's true, isn't it? You know, it's everybody now has sort of six packs, and women have to look a certain way, and in a way, it's kind of all right to just be. You know, he's a geezer. He fights people, and he has a boat. I mean, it just made me want to buy a boat. That was the real and the end result of this film was just me sitting looking how much boats are and being impressed by how inexpensive boats can be.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
I found like a really nice sailing boat for $8,000. That's got like it's got a toilet, a shower, a kitchenette, a bedroom, and a little.
Got to learn to sail, though, mate.
Well, you know, I can do that. Get a book.
Also, there's a hell of a lot to learn about the sea and what have you.
Well, it's wet, isn't it?
Yeah, this is where you're going to fall down, I think. Also,
it's a lifestyle.
Paying for have it, you know, in a harbour.
Yeah, to have it patricked up all the time.
Have it what?
Patricked up. Moored.
Patrick.
Sorry, it's me being very silly.
That's very good.
No, it's inexpensive entry, but then a lifetime of money and maintenance as well, isn't it? Once a year, you've got to have it all looked over and.
Yeah, totally. By the way, I saw a ship, a boat being lifted out of the sea here recently. It had been holed, and they were, and this is at night after we'd had dinner down in the bay, and the crane pulled this thing out, and it kind of just came across towards us. It was like like seeing a flying boat, and then you could see the hole where they'd clearly stuffed clothes in the hole to stop it sinking, and there was all these clothes just hanging out of a hole in the hull.
That must have been quite frightening.
Of course, another thing that was brilliant about this film for me was the boat thing, because I was brought up on boats. You know, my dad always had a little yacht, and again, this was all the sea stuff. Absolutely loved it, and my dad loved it as well. Great film. Honestly, 5 exclamation marks. If there were 6, I'd give it 6. The nostalgia value. I mean, in so many ways, it's. So my wife's asking me if I'm hungry, and I'm going to say podcasting. There we are. Yeah, just.
It's great, you know.
Yeah, in so many ways, of course, it is a bit of old pap, and it is old-fashioned, and it is a bit sexist.
But then it's just you know, as I always say, and will always stand up for these things. It's a product of its time. We can criticise it, but you know, it's the type of thing. Once we start saying don't watch it because of this, then I think it's a sad time to be alive. I thought, you know, I went into this last night and I was really tired, and I thought, I've got to watch a film now. You know, I've got to concentrate. Within 5 minutes, I was like, this is gonna be great. Had the best time.
I'm so glad. Best time. Honestly. I kind of thought it would be right up your street, but one can never tell.
Well, quite.
You know,
I mean,
because my emotional connection, my irrational, ridiculous emotional connection to it is so personal and to do with, you know, very specific things that I've mentioned. It's I'm so glad that you liked it. Brilliant.
Well, to the extent I might even watch it again. There we go.
I watch it quite often.
I recommend to anybody, I'll give it 5 out of 5. I recommend grab a copy of it, DVD, carve out a Sunday afternoon and watch it, and you will have a great time. 2 really trivial facts about it is that in the trailer, the line where she says, "You better be gentle with me in bed," they cut in bed in the trailer, and she just says, "You better be gentle with me." And the DVD I've got of it, the VHS I've got of it, on the cover, the main picture is the man who Uncle Arthur slides the hatch into the back of his head, and it's him just going like that, and they obviously thought it was Anthony Hopkins. So goodness.
The main picture is of some random extra who gets it in the back of the neck. It's just totally
that looked painful as well, didn't it? Let's be honest here.
Dear.
Not a nice way to...
I must just say, poor Corin Redgrave. What was the name of his character? I can't remember. I've seen the film so many times.
What a horrible way
death for him. It broke my heart.
Roy, his name was.
Roy's death.
But they leave it quite a long time before that's resolved, and then when you see it, you think, blimey, you know, that's really
the nearest
grim.
You get to an emotional thing from Calvert, where he just grabs the side of the ship as he sees him coming up on the anchor.
And he knows.
And the music. Oh, I'm quite moved talking about it.
It's
about
very,
some
it's
silly
very
little
well
rip-off
done.
spy movie.
And also, the one thing I will say is that the ships in this film are still out there, and they mainly operate now in the Mediterranean.
Thank you very much for that fact.
That was a point that I like things like that. Like, does that still exist? I like
and
those sorts of
Scotland
things.
is still very much Scottish.
Isle of Skye, yes.
I'm just going to see whether we can get Jamie.
Good
I just
idea.
doubt it. I doubt it.
It's when we call him and find he's on a secret mission at the Isle of Skye.
He'll be having some important call. No. It's a no-show, I think. I'm just reduced to impersonating a phone ringing now. It's not going to happen.
We tried.
No,
we tried.
he's gone. He's gone. He's dead.
Zoom.
I hope not. I was going to suggest we continue and hopefully complete our recap next week, but you think we should do Pyramids of Mars?
Do the
commentary?
recap because that needs resolving.
Let's resolve that.
Let's resolve that, and then
Good.
we can look forward. That's what we do. That's
Good.
how we do it.
I'll just go and have the sandwich my wife has bought for me.
Marvellous. I'm going to have tuna and rice or something, pasta.
Mine's beef and horseradish sandwich.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Oh, that's
Thank
nice,
you.
isn't it?
And some hula hoops.
Thank you.
I might have a cup of soup.
Cup of soup. Oh, I like a cup of soup. Oh, it's a
Tomato.
good day. It's a good day for vegetable soup, though, isn't it? It's that kind of vegetable soup weather. Yeah.
All right, then. Well, time to get very close.
Yes. There we. Oh, that's nice and bassy. Well, thanks for joining us on this culting journey. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. Well, let's go on to the next thing. What do you want to do next?
1 or 2.
1.
So here, I'm just going to let you say this.
Well, it's a figure. And it was given to me by someone at a convention. There's
It was
too
in
much
like a
of me.
package as well, wasn't it?
It was. There's too much of me talking on this podcast anyway, so I think you should say. And if someone would stop texting me, we wouldn't keep having dinging noises all the time. Right?
Especially because it's a bit distorted coming from one device to the other.
Yeah.
It's going beeping. This is a figure. I'm just going to go over the descriptions before I say who the figure is.
Mm-hmm.
So it has... you know what these parts of the figure, because it was a figure chopped in half and then placed it. It was like different parts of different figures all moulded into one and then 8. I think this is a like brand new head piece. Isn't it? No, it's from something else. Well, why won't you want to go over what these came from if you can?
I don't know. I know that the top of it... Well, can you say what it's meant to be representing?
You.
It was, someone made up a figure to be a bit like me. But what he's done is taken the top of Lex Luthor.
Oh, yes, I remember now.
Yeah. And painted the hair differently. The very little bit of hair. And he's painted a pink shirt. Because I used to wear a pink shirt, didn't I?
Pink, blue, those colours. And
the legs, I don't know where the legs are from, but they've been added from somewhere else.
they look like there's some kind of putty around them there.
So basically someone faked up a Nick Briggs figure.
Exactly.
Was it in America?
I don't remember. I think you were in Chicago.
Right.
But there's like putty around the feet. Look.
It's weird, isn't it?
It's interesting.
That's where he's just moulded something on there.
To make it look...
Did you ever play with that figure?
No, I think I just stored it in... Oh, look at that! So apparently he painted the thing because look, that's blue.
Oh, yeah.
So apparently...
You can see where the shirt isn't all painted as well.
Oh yeah, if you move the coat slightly out the way, there's a little bit of white, which is the colour the shirt used to be, on both sides because they've just painted the stuff. You can see if you just leave it standing, it looks fine. But then when you really fiddle with it and find out its cons and pros. That's one of the cons.
Well, that's a nice item of interest, Ben. Thank you very much.
And it also came with a Dalek. I mean, it can't not come without a Dalek, because you are a Dalek.
Thank you.
Or at least your voice is.
Yes.
I'm a bit scared now.
Oh, pressing stop now. Ka-chunk.